Before we get started with the show, I need to have a quick word with you all. Would you like to have your brand before the tens of thousands of listeners and viewers of the Good Oil podcast? Contact me at cam@goodoil.news.
Hey, now welcome to the show, where the wind's blowing strong and the truth can flow. This is the Good Oil. Catch a vibe today with Cam Slater leading us all the way.
Brian Henry, welcome to episode 15 of the Good Oil podcast.
Thank you.
We're kind of mates now, aren't we, after a number of years?
Known each other for a long, long time. I think you're a 8-year-old when I first met you at your dad's place when I was doing the original work with Winston. Quite a while.
You've been working with Winston Peters for forever. I think you helped nail up the arc with Winston, didn't you?
Oh, probably not quite the arc, but yeah, wasn't the Titanic because we're still floating.
Yeah, you've been a barrister for how long?
I was admitted in 1975, practiced on my own since 1986.
Yeah.
So 50 years all up.
50 years practicing law.
Yep.
And you've been involved in an awful lot. Before we get onto that, why don't you tell us a bit about young Brian Henry? Because people don't know that those stories. People don't know where you come from. What were the things that formed your, ethos?
Born in Arapuni, which most people don't even know where is. Lived in Tokoroa, where a lot of people now do know where is. But I went through the Tokoroa schools, Tokoroa High School. Dad was the resident director, Kinleith, for the company. So going through the Remuneration Authority strikes against Rob Muldoon and all that here, it was pretty dangerous for me as the boss's son in the town. But they never knew I was the boss's son until the last few days when I was at school. But had they known that I had to remove me, it was a violent town. And most people do not understand the degree of power and control of the unions and the methodologies of the unions back in the Bill Anderson, Carl Anderson days. They were quite incredible days. But you certainly learnt and understood a very different side of life. So, yeah, it was a school of hard knocks.
School of hard knocks in rural New Zealand.
Yep.
But also the son of a corporate, although we didn't really have corporations as such back then, but certainly at the corporate end of town.
It was New Zealand's biggest company in the time. And the town was a one-horse company-owned town. And fortunately for us, Dad bought a property off the side of town, so they always thought we were farmers' kids. Nothing to do with the company. But yeah, we were company kids.
And then when you left school, what happened then?
I left school to go to University in Canterbury to do a law degree. And my uncle, Sir Trevor, Dad spoke to him and he said Canterbury's the place to go. So young Brian went to Canterbury and did law in Canterbury. Simple as that.
And you've been a lawyer ever since?
Yeah. Loved it ever since. It's just a way of life. It's not a job.
You've had some big cases in your time, from being involved in the wine box inquiry to a number of other cases. Why don't you run through some of those cases and what you saw that wasn't reported in the media, perhaps, or some insights?
Yeah, one of the earliest ones, just talking about Bill and Carl Anderson, was I injuncted the station engine drivers union. This is under the old law before the National Party changed it all. And, you walk into court and they'd have 10, 15 big watersiders lining the seats in the court just there to intimidate you. And the fun of it was you'd walk up and talk to them about, come and see how the courts work, constitutional, this and that. And they'd just sit there and look at you as if this isn't working. We're supposed to be intimidating this guy and he's happy chatting with us. But I worked with big, heavy union guys. I remember one in particular, a guy called Bill Shrimp. And Bill was a good, solid socialist, not to put too much of a ring on it. But, he was a really big guy, and they knew how to intimidate. And these guys tried the same tactic, but I was used to it. And, little wee 5'6" Henry goes walking past them sort of eye to eye, and they're sitting down. Those sort of memories are just ones you'd never want to forget. But more importantly, I got a really good grounding in running court cases in criminal law. So I did just every criminal case I could find, and until the firm one day said, "You got to start making us money," and I moved into civil work. But I've been to the Court of Appeal quite a few times, High Court jury trials, absolute fun. But the big thing was those cases were dealt with, done quick, fast. Nowadays, you look at all the nonsense they get up to, and I'm sorry, they're not doing any better justice, but God, they waste a lot of time and money. And you just got on and did things.
You mentioned the difference now. If you look at my case, the Colin Craig case.
Yep.
It took us 2 years to get a judgment from Justice Toogood in that 2 years on what was really a simple matter.
In the early days, that case would have been a jury, and at the end of the evidence, the jury goes out and comes back, and you get an answer, and that's quick and fast. Rarely do juries hang. Normally, they come up with an answer one way or the other. And again, back into the very early days when I was practicing with juries in civil trials, they were quick, not legal justice, but what I call real common sense justice. And the juries were not fooled. They were really smart. They saw beneath the phase of all the bullshit. We'd have got a much stronger result, I believe, with a jury than with the court judge alone system. Judge alone, judges are...
Well, we actually asked for a jury trial for that, and Toogood overrode it.
That's right.
Yeah, so the judge overrode our right to have a jury trial, and then he sits there for 2 years on a judgment.
Well, the thing is that because they're a judge, they have to write an opinion with long, lengthy reasons. The jury just says yes or no. And that's why I say it's very fast and efficient. But I'm a great believer in juries, but the system's gone away from them. It hasn't sped law up. It's actually slowed law down, in my view. I believe juries with a quick, clean result is fast.
I always consider it to be arrogant of judges to make a decision, oh no, this is very complex, and a jury wouldn't be able to cope with that. Is that your feeling?
There are a very few cases where it gets a bit too hard for a jury, but you're talking an incredible technical law.
Technical or intellectual property or something like that.
Well, people don't realize in the United States, patent trials are juries. So at the end of the day, basically a jury, I believe, can handle most things. People aren't stupid. But we've just gone the other direction. That's been the judicial policies. America still uses juries big time. They seem to get things done faster than we do.
Perhaps there's a role for you somewhere to do some...
I got too much to do.
Too much?
I don't need any more jobs.
You don't need any more jobs.
No.
You've been in, as I said, you've been involved in some big cases. One of the most famous ones, I guess, was the wine box inquiry.
Yep.
Was that a real eye-opener for you, or were you a bit jaundiced about the whole political process and everything else before that?
I first got into politics doing the Wairarapa electoral petition for Wyatt Creech, and that was just after I had gone out to the bar, and I was doing a major case between Westpac and then Equity Corp, and that case settled, and I got approached because the National Party lawyers at the time, if it was only one vote loss, wouldn't have it on. So for $5,000, I was flown down to the Wairarapa, and we had a look around, and I could see I could win on costs. Absolute, we had him dead to rights. We had 28,000 5,000 was the limit. So I knew I could create a by-election. So, I just hammered on and banged out I think it was called a widely based petition. Of course it was widely based. We hardly had time. And that's where I met Winston. And it was quite funny because I was sitting in my office and my secretary at the time, Penny comes in and says, I think it's Winston Peters. Yeah, Penny, you don't think it's Winston. It either is Winston or isn't. Yeah, it's Winston Peters. So in comes Winston. And in those days, I had an oval desk. And we literally went round and round that desk. He was trying to sort out who I was, what made me tick, where were we going to. And in the end, I said to him, listen, I will win on cost. And he says, shit, you can't do that. And I says, will. I'm acting for my client. National Party doesn't control me. And he says, okay, can we reach a deal? I'll help you win the case because it was important to me to win it. But you have to stall until all of the National Party MPs are time barred for complaints on costs. Yeah, fine. No problems with that. I'm a natural conspirator for games like that. And he explained to me that certain MPs had well exceeded their budget. Some were talking 70, 75,000, which is pretty excessive. You can probably work out who from your knowledge.
So Winston was worried about a tit-for-tat exchange of lawsuits based on costs.
Yeah. So I'd filed the petition with costs in it, and we just ignored that from then on, and everything was about votes. And when we got to start the trial, it was so bad, we actually had two teams. One team were political National Party people working on the votes, and there was another team which was just hard-nosed lawyers working on costs. And it was quite funny because the two teams were kept totally apart except for me. We got this house in the Wairarapa, which was put on for us by the local party faithful. And I'm sitting with this accountant from the cost team. We've got all these receipts and everything around the table. And in walks the team who were doing the votes. Oh, what's this? Oh, we're opening on costs tomorrow. Oh, they just went white. Round to the phone. In those days, the house had a slider and the phone was pushed to one room or pushed the other to the slider. So phone goes through, it shuts. We can hear they're saying, oh, Max, they're opening on costs. Well, what do we do? And that created a real stir. So it's fun. Next morning, I open, get to costs, and I tell you what, you could have hit a pin drop in the place. There was not a sound. The Labor team was just pale as ghosts sitting there. Oh my shit. And the only person grinning was Winston sitting out the back because he knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And we ran costs and we ran it successfully. And that was the first time anybody had sat and pulled up. But had I been a National Party lawyer, not acting for Wyatt personally, I would have been stopped because they don't like those things being raised. This is what you don't do. And it was quite funny because...
What year was that?
87, 88.
Yeah.
I was trying to think, Neville Young was the president.
Right.
And he made a public statement that gets in all the media that I double-crossed him by opening on costs. And I get interviewed by a journalist and it was, well, who's Neville Young? I've never met him. I've never spoken to him. So all of a sudden the order came that when we're coming back through on a Sunday after the weekend, I had to go out somewhere in Wellington to see Neville. So I got to meet Neville Young, but I didn't give a shit. Wyatt was my client and my client was there to win.
So I remember Dad talking about that, I was a wee nipper. Well, not wee.
Well, this is when I met you.
Yeah.
You're about 8?
87, you probably. That was a bit older.
It's probably
born in 68, so.
Yeah, probably 88, 89 I met you because life was getting interesting in the party with Winston at that stage.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's why we were around at your place. So
yeah. But I can remember Dad talking about that and how the National Party were abject cowards, and he was saying, well, you should go for the doctor. It's only one vote, we can overturn that easy. And because Dad had been involved in the Only Hunger petition and all of that sort of stuff with the double vote, with 27 people.
Yeah, and
of course there was Winston's and Hunua.
Hunua and Winston, yeah, that's the other one, yeah.
So, Dad was pretty up with the play on how to do this, but the party mandarins in Wellington were somehow, I don't think they liked Wyatt Creech, and they didn't actually want him in Parliament. That's the gut feel that I got from the discussion.
Yeah, I think Wyatt got that impression too, because when we won it, it was quite hilarious because all of a sudden, all the politicians started turning up at the hearing, and finally Bolger turns up. And people were saying, oh, you're going to win now because Bolger's turned up. He wouldn't come unless he thought you were going to win. Well, Jim thinking I'm going to win is one thing. Me thinking I'm going to win is a total other, because you don't know you've won until you've actually got there. And we get to the Parliament and they read out the result. Reg is taken out, and then they wait for Wyatt to come in.
Poor old Reg Borman, eh?
Yeah, everybody goes down to the stairs out the front, and up turns Wyatt. And of course, Bolger's up the front to shake his hand. And if you watch the videos closely, he actually cut Bolger off to come and shake my hand. He absolutely snubbed Bolger. And he hated Bolger from that time on, because he actually led the Shipley number counting to roll Bolger. That was Wyatt Creech's work. He did a good job. He got him.
Well, that's another example of National Party cowardice, because they rolled Bolger while he was overseas.
Oh, always do that. Never do it when the guy's facing you.
And then none of the MPs wanted to tell Bolger, so they rung up my father and told him to meet him at the airport and tell him it is over. That's how pathetic they were.
Well, I got news to you. Winston beat them because he was in the coalition government at that stage, and he rang Jim in Paris. So Jim, in fact, was told by Winston. See, they had an incredible rapport. Those two fought like cats and dogs right through 87, 88 into the early 90s. And I mean absolute cats and dogs. Winston could get the crowds. I used to go there and he'd fill the halls.
Yep.
And then Bolger would be the second speaker. If it was a Bolger meeting, there'd be more journos and party faithful than audience there. But Winston could really pack the halls. So you had this very charismatic, very straight shooting politician in Winston. And Winston has always had a set of principles, still has them, hasn't left them. And he was firing on all cylinders, anti the Labour new neoliberal economy, which I personally was always of the view was a total disaster. And the damage is still being felt today from that. So he was very anti that, and I was quite happy to support him, because I could see where it was going to go in 20, 30 years, and we're paying the price now. You look at the economy now, that is a direct result of Rogernomics and then Reuthonomics, followed by, they utterly destroyed the manufacturing base of New Zealand. A company like NZ Forest Products, huge manufacturer of timber, paper, things like that. Why on earth would we let plastic into the bloody world for packaging instead of paper? Oh, it was cheaper. But in actual fact, people talk about climate change. Sorry, talk about plastic.
Yeah.
That's a far bigger problem than climate change ever will be. It's totally insidious. It's everywhere. It's actually in our bodies now, doing God knows what to us. And that was right back then. And we just saw business after business being destroyed by cheap imports. But in particular, Asian imports, mainly from China, killed our jobs. We couldn't compete with a bowl of rice. And that's literally what their free trade philosophy and things like that did. And you look at Trump now with tariffs. These guys just dropped all our tariffs, all our protections. Our farmers almost went bust. They've survived through, yes, they're stronger now, but that's because of the nature of those men and women, not because of government policy. And food. We all need food. But right back in the early 1990s, we could see that problem. Anyway, what happens is I was engaged by the Nats to investigate the BNZ because everybody knew there was something stinky there, just didn't know what. So I did an awful lot of work for free, digging into what was happening around the BNZ. Winston led the landslide election, so the Nats absolutely creamed Labor out.
Yeah, 1990 was a huge election.
Fabulous election. The public spoke, neoliberal out, gone. That's what they're voting for. Winston gets into cabinet and Bolger comes in and says, we've sold the BNZ. No, sorry, that's wrong. No, we have to bail out the BNZ because it's 850 or 750 million in debt. And he'd agreed on the Sunday after the election with someone from the Fay Rishwhite bank guys that they're going to bail them out. And Winston said, well, who's doing it? And he was told. And he said, well, shouldn't we have Philip Burden on it as well? Because at least Philip understands international finance.
Mm.
You can work out who the other ones are likely to be.
Well, Philip Burden was a mushroom grower, wasn't he?
Well, that's
amongst other
things. That's a business he took on.
So he knew a fair bit about bullshit, though.
He was, that's unfair. He was a very clever businessman. He saw the opportunity with mushrooms. And
I'm praising him.
He's had to learn of those jokes ever since. But the difference was you had a guy who was actually used to international finance sitting in your cabinet, and you've got a dandy lawyer in Paul East, you've got Jim Bolger, good solid farmer, and you've got Bill Birch, who was a quantity surveyor or something like that. Bill was a politician's politician, very, very astute, very clever with what he did. But the group he was dealing with were a way different league in terms of finance and what they did. But the thing is that the BNZ should never have gone broke. Anyway, Winston says that, and then I get a phone call. Oh, Henry, you're working on this BNZ. Yeah. He says, oh, you better come down. He says, I don't know what the hell to put my feet in here. And I came down, and he and I then started to work together because it was very clear he was going to be pushed out of the party. And didn't matter what he did, they were going to get rid of him because the forces had massed to get rid of him. But the forces had massed to bring the neoliberal economy further forward. So we suffer for 2 more terms of neoliberal.
But we're still suffering this.
Success through Ruth.
Yeah.
And we get to a point where what we worked to stop in 1990 election carried on in an even worse form. Now, I was at university with Ruth Richardson. She was in some of my lectures, and I've got my own opinion of her long before she got there. And as you'll guess, it's not flattering, but I won't go into it. But what we had was this dogged approach to economics. To hell with the Kiwis, to hell with the average battler. And, sort of Rob's Mob and all those, they just got absolutely screwed over. And MMP came along. And I was a great advocate of MMP because we had to break up the 2-party monopoly if Winston was going to survive in politics, because if the 2-party monopoly stayed, he had no hope unless he joined Labor. That wasn't going to happen because he's not a Labor Party policy guy at all. And MMP comes through, and he was incredibly successful the first time with MMP because his policies resonated away. The problem is the public still don't understand MMP to this day properly.
No, they don't. They don't
get it.
They either vote red or blue. They change their T-shirts depending on the election, and we keep staggering along with these 2 moribund political parties that are not interested in Kiwis at all. They're more interested in getting re-elected.
And they're a machine.
Mm.
And
it's a very efficient machine because
they're an efficient machine.
On the other side of that, I've seen the knocking machine of the National Party move into action multiple times. When they want to rinse an MP, they rinse an MP. And they did it to Winston, and they've been doing it for 35 years to Winston.
They've been trying to. They haven't succeeded.
Yeah, but they're
there.
That's why I laughed at the last election, because on the election night, it was obvious that Luxon wasn't there without Winston. Yeah. And the National Party, everyone in the National Party, you can't trust Winston. He has never delivered anything. And of course, it's a lie, but that's the National Party's way. And it still persists today.
Well, my favourite one when they say that is, oh, what about the gold card?
Yeah.
And every time the Nats will say, gold card is gone the moment we get into power. And they've never got rid of it because the gold card is their voting base. And it's also a lot of Labor's voting base. The gold card is a simple single policy by Winston, has been an absolute brilliant success. He's done a lot of other stuff as well. And when you look at him, what he's doing now on the international stage with foreign affairs, this country is so lucky to have him. And there he is flying around the country so fast it's not funny, flying around the world so fast it's not funny actually, keeping New Zealand's end up. He's an amazing guy. But,
I was part of that knocking machine of Winston Peters for a good number of years.
I know that.
So Dad. But that's so was Dad. But that remarkable thing about Winston Peters is his capacity to forgive. And I've experienced that myself.
Oh, Cam, this is life. This is about politics and wanting the best for your country. And when you've got people that want the best for the country, but they've got slightly different views to you, you have to be tolerant of them because they're actually coming from the same place in their hearts. So I've always known, and I'm sure Winston's always known, that you're slightly misguided, but you're genuine. That's what matters. It's when they're not genuine, that's when I've come involved more and we've litigated with people and had people on, because the attacks on Winston have just been horrific. But just get in and you battle them back and battle them back and battle them back. So long as we keep stamping on people's toes, they know if they go too far, Winston is going to attack them and he's going to put them through shit back the other way. That's what we've done.
Well, it was like the attack on Winston in 2017 about his pension.
Oh, that was disgraceful.
Yeah.
Absolutely disgraceful.
I mean, they all sat there with butter wouldn't melt in their mouth looks.
Yeah.
We knew nothing about this. It was utter bullshit.
Yeah. But the thing is, if you look at the form, it is clearly a mistake. And as soon as it was pointed out, he fixed it up. But what happens? Some people in power decide, we have to tell the minister about this because it's such an important event. It's just a man made a mistake on a form. But because that man was Winston Peters, that was exciting news. And guess how they used it? They used it to try and say he's a fraud, which was always baseless. So that case was mainly about getting the truth out about the mistake in the form. And guess what? They've had to change the form because they now accepted it's ambiguous. Didn't in the trial, but as soon as the trial was over, a new form comes out. And it was an absolute easy-made mistake. Full stop. It was just a load of bloody crap thrown at him. They set it up. They ran it because certain people in power wanted Winston gone. Hey, they failed.
It was the National Party knocking machine again.
Yeah.
And that's where I couldn't fathom. And because people say, Winston Peters appointed Jacinda Ardern as Prime Minister. And they don't, this just shows how people don't understand how MMP works. And the other argument is, Winston was ready to sue them, the National Party, and so he wasn't negotiating in good faith. But everyone ignores the fact that Bill English had no interest in negotiating. You know that. And also, Bill English had as part of the negotiating team, Paula Bennett.
Part of the scared they're going to get sued is, I suppose, a little bit frightened of what me and Winston have done together. But that was nothing more than bullshit, because there's nothing you can sue on an election. The result's the result. And it then comes down to a negotiation. And the Nats, I'm sorry, don't know how to negotiate. It's our way, and you can have this job or that job. All about policy. They don't want to talk policy. They don't want to bend from policy. And Bill English, from my knowledge of what happened, wasn't prepared to shift on policies that, frankly, the country was crying out for, and there needed to be an easing off on people in the lower echelons of the community. They didn't want to. He's back again, the Ruthonomics type approach. That is an absolute anathema to everything that people like Winston Peters stand for. He looks after all New Zealanders, not some. These guys want to look after some. And that's where you had a negotiation that was doomed to fail because people coming to the table just weren't in an honest negotiating mode. And I say honest because when you come to negotiation, you've got to be able to sit and talk. Labor sat and talked. You got good policy concessions. It became a case of keeping Labor believing that National was negotiating like mad so that you could get more and more out of them. And Winston was the master of balancing that. And if people actually sat back and looked at the skill with which he managed and handled that, it's utterly incredible because the guy just knows when to stop, when to push, when to prod. And he played National along. He could have just walked out. He played along because Labor was desperate to get to power and they were conceding things. You were never, ever going to take the leader of the the leader of the Labor Party and not have them as the Prime Minister. This is the same with Bill English. It was never, if there's a deal, ever going to be anything but the leader of the biggest party was going to be the Prime Minister. Fact of life. But people don't understand when this government gets set up, it starts out fine, and then there's a cabal inside Labor that suddenly emerges, and people like David Parker and that get pushed out of the way, and this little Koitri comes through, and they start again trying to beat the deal. The deal was the deal. They didn't follow it. They always try and play games inside. So Winston has to manage it. Look, Jenny Shipley did the same. She rolls Bolger. She plays inside the coalition. But it's Winston. It's not. It's people not sticking to their deals. One thing I know about Winston, if he says, I will do that, he will do it.
Yep. That's
and
my
he will keep
experience.
doing it, and he will never, ever go back on his word. I've dealt with this guy for years and years and years. He has never misled me. He has always been utterly straight with me. I haven't always been straight with the world acting for him because that's my job. But Winston with me has always been absolutely straight up and down, no bullshit. And I've seen him in politics. He's the same. But people try and take advantage of him, back away. He's then got to maneuver and do what he can to keep the country running. Because the number one principle of this guy is we've got to govern the country fairly. That's what all the coalition deals are about. How does he get to a point where he can see the country run fairly based off the hand he's got? He's done a great job. Right now, people are starting to appreciate this man should have been our Prime Minister in 1990.
Might have been a different outcome.
Utterly different. And if we'd stopped the neoliberal economy in 1990, as the voters wanted, this would be a very strong, wealthy little country right now. But the rape continued. They sold off all the companies. They raped them. Forest Products, classic example, cashed up company worth these days billions, and all that money got siphoned out to a greedy few. And where the jobs go? Gone. Companies basically now closed down. All we got the forest growing, and those forests are absolute worth a fortune. But who's harvesting them? Who's turning them into product? We just don't have an economy that is taking our basic stuff and value adding it. We're just shipping out the logs. What a waste.
It's not just the political parties that are opposed to Winston Peters, is it? It's the media as well. And by extension, that extends to you. You've got, people like Guy and Espen. I'm thinking what he called you the Prince of Darkness of New Zealand First or something like that.
Yeah, a few other things here.
Few other things.
Yeah, I've called him a few back privately, but that's all right.
It's fair to say, though, you've got a bit of a fearsome reputation out there. not only in the legal circles, but also in political circles, that if anyone hears Henry's coming for you, they sort of quiver.
Well, they always go and employ a King's Counsel. That's the first thing they do. I've got more King's Counsels and jobs than probably anybody else. The thing is I just do my job. Simple as that. And, Winston is a great client to act for, and he's a very principled client to act for. So, you've always got a client who hasn't put you up the duff.
But you're very principled as well, in my experience. I mean, when I came meet you to discuss the Colin Craig situation, you listened to that story and you said, "This isn't right.
Yeah,
I'll do this, Cam."
I've got an innate sense of right and wrong, and it's just my sense of right and wrong. It came out of the days in Tokoroa. It came out of a whole lot of my upbringing. My uncle, Sir Trevor Henry, he had a big influence on me. And if I see something and I think it's wrong, then I will do something about it. I remember Sue Couch when she came in to see me, and
Sue Couch is the RSA
lady.
the lady. Yeah.
Could we sue in negligence corrections and get punitive damages? And the law at the time was, no, we can't. And I had a young junior at the time, and she's a very good lawyer. She came up with his opinion that said I can't win. And I had a look at the opinion. It was a really good law. I said, fine, let's change the law. You can't do that. And I said,
Yeah, you can.
And she was, but you can't do that. A couple of weeks later, she quit. And she went off and got a job with one of the big firms. And I said to her, look, you're well placed in the big firm because you're a brilliant lawyer. I don't disrespect your opinion. I disrespect the law, which is totally different to what you were doing. She got it later, but at the time she was new out of law school, all bright and shiny, and the law's the law, and it's wonderful. Somewhere along the line, I learned that the law wasn't the law, and it wasn't fair, and it had a lot of issues. Colour of skin, socioeconomic position, a whole lot of factors. But it always came back in my head, is this just? And if I don't think it's just, I won't stop. Simple as that. I've been told a couple of times by the Court of Appeal I'm wrong. Good. They're wrong. I'm right. I've got just an equal opinion as to what the law is, and I haven't changed my views 1 inch as what's just. But I've pushed the case as far as I can in the system, and I'll keep doing it, and still doing
it. Now you're involved in various different actions surrounding the Gloriavale. I'll call it a cult. You might not, but it seems to be a cult from the outside. Why don't you tell us a bit about what's been going on there? Because I've been following that, and we've been chatting over coffee and talking about this, and I'm sitting here. This is going to, when you can talk about this stuff, Brian, this is going to be unbelievable for people to see what hasn't been reported in the media.
Well, there are a whole pile of suppression orders in existence at the moment, and I've got to dance on pinheads to get around a lot of those.
You're a lawyer, you can cope with that.
Oh, thanks. Basically, Gloriavale started in late 80s, early 90s, and the police raided the community. Remember, this is the same time as Bert Potter and Centrepoint up in Auckland. They raided the community and they took out the leader, a guy called Neville Cooper, who had changed his name to Hopeful Christian. He was the overseeing shepherd. Now, overseeing shepherd is the right hand of God. You have to be in two things: unity, which means you do exactly what he does, and submission, which means you never question him. You trot along and you follow him no matter what. So they've got these two powerful things going. So when I talk about the overseeing shepherd, it's not just a title. This is a man with absolute power in the community.
And delusions of grandeur.
Well, he's no delusion.
He's saying he's the right-hand man, right hand of God.
He to them has got that grandeur. And he has awesome power. They can discipline, shift where you work, shift where you go, decide what you do, decide your job,
Who you marry.
But if you misbehave, you go to a shepherd and servants meeting where they can throw you out. Now, if you're thrown out, then your salvation, they're taught, is in jeopardy. In other words, you're going to go to hell. But not only that, you get pushed out and then you get shunned by all your family, all your friends. So if you've been born in the community, you know nothing outside, they can kick you out on the street with nothing and you're gone. And Hopeful Christian finally gets convicted. And he's convicted in part of having wooden dildos that they'd carved that were used to teach the girls how to have sex. Now, I'm sorry, that is, to me, unbelievably horrible. But these kids have got no choice. He's the boss, and they're in submission, and they're abused. So a whole series of girls run complaints against him for various stuff. He goes to the first trial, gets convicted. Back for the second trial. By then, they've got at a whole lot of these witnesses, and they drop off. A couple stay, and he gets convicted again. He goes on appeal. This time, he drops the appeal against conviction and just fights on the sentence. And he gets jail. Deserves it. But he gets parole, and the parole order orders him back to live in the Gloriavale community.
Where he committed these offences in the first place.
The same group he committed offences with the same vulnerable group, with nothing done to protect the people in there. So he's ordered back into the community. And for the next 50 years, he's been happily, until he died,
interfering with children,
living inside this little breeding ground of young children. And when you look at these documents, what we believe, my analysis, and it's my analysis because everybody disagrees with me, that's on the other side of the court case, my analysis is they set up a way to grab all the money, keep all the property together, have all these slaves work for them for free, and it costs them $35 a week or something like that to feed, clothe, and house all the people in the community. They're making money hand over fist. And this is just carried on and carried on. But those little girls and boys are slaves, and they have been slaves since 1990. So we've now got adults coming into the leadership who have all their life been slaves. They're smarter slaves because they've gotten good with the boss, so they got up to be a servant or a shepherd. But they don't have
slaves nonetheless.
They're slaves, but they don't have any world experience now. And we've just got a new overseeing shepherd because the last one just got convicted and resigned.
What was he convicted of?
Sex offences with little girls. That's what they always do. It's a sex cult. Now, the good people in Gloriavale hate me saying that, and quite rightly, because they're genuine Christians, genuinely believe, but there's this evil, dark underbelly that they have no understanding of that has been run by these leaders. And they're duped. They're totally duped. And you get people come out, and they are good Christians. I've seen them now. They've joined various churches around the South Island, and they are genuine Christians, respect them. But they don't understand how seriously they have been abused. They don't get it. And slowly but surely, as the convictions are pouring through, they're starting to get it. But the simple reality is that this place is now falling apart, not because of what the government's doing, but because of what I'm doing. My little team with a group of dedicated leavers who really understand now what's gone wrong, they have done amazing work to get this litigation going and drive it through. We're fighting a $65 million cashed up organisation. We've got no resources.
You're doing it for love, aren't you?
Most of it.
Yeah.
And we've now got a little bit of legal aid clicking in, so we're actually getting our expenses covered and a little bit of money. But most of it has been simply done on the fact that we aren't prepared to walk away.
Sorry to interrupt you. I need to have a quick word with you about sponsorship. If you like what we're doing, and tens of thousands of people are viewing these podcasts every week, then you need to put your brand before our audience. Contact me at cam@goodoil.news. Now back to the interview. This is the Brian Henry. You've seen an injustice and you want to see it corrected.
You see a photograph of a little 5-year-old girl with a little scarf on her head, and that scarf means subservience to males. You got to do something about it, because that's what those scarves mean, subservient to men. It's in their document. That's what they say. And then you start learning about their life and what's happening. I got introduced through a guy called John Reddy, who had been kicked out for reading other scriptures, and he had been separated from his family, and they were busy trying to drive him out. They hid his wife and kids, things like that. He wanted his family. And it was a horrific situation when you sit down and work out what they'd done to him, how they'd shunned him, how they treated him, the shepherds and servants meetings he'd been through. And you start to realize there is something really bad here. But then the sexual abuse started to come out. People started talking about that to me, and you're sitting going, whoa, this isn't just about a custody case. This isn't just about a guy who's upsetting their preaching. This is about the fact that you have got this very serious evil undertone here. How do you get at that? Well, the only way is police prosecutions or social welfare. They've got the powers. I don't have any court power I can use to deal with that. To do that, I've got to get a plaintiff, which has got to be a victim inside the community being abused, who comes out and is prepared to give evidence. They get so much pressure on them because of family and all that inside the community. It's incredibly hard to get a witness who will deal with anything civilly on the sex side. I haven't been able to do that. The police have recently had some success, but that's because of leavers coming out being believed. There was a big group who came out in 2015. They went to the media. The media beat up a storm. The government set up a special committee, interdepartmental committee, to deal with the Gloriavale issue. I've got to stop there because that's in one of the litigations we're running, and I'm going to hit some suppression orders if I talk about it too much. But we are suing civil servants in
I was going to ask
the
that
government
because
departments.
this community is in the middle of nowhere. How are these kids educated?
They own the school. And what we believe says that they will be taught what is necessary for them to live in the community, which isn't much.
And who funds this school?
You do. Taxpayers.
So the taxpayers are funding this community, which has a bunch of sexual predators leading it, and the state's doing nothing.
Well, what we worked out through the two trials, the boys and the girls trial, is that Gloriavale feeds everybody based on the Working for Families payments, plus some money that comes in for the schools. So you've got two sources of revenue, which totally is on the backs of having lots of little kids. So their whole economics are based on women having lots of children. So the women are actually the providers of all the money that feeds and houses everybody. They then run businesses. That money doesn't go anywhere near feeding the families. So we've actually got instances where we've seen them take substantial sums of money out of the Working for Families money and use it for buying properties and things like that. So the economic driver is working for families, education and midwives. All of it, little children. So their whole economy is based on having lots of little children. So the rule is a woman, when she's fertile, cannot refuse a husband to avoid getting pregnant. That's written in the rules. So they get pregnant all the time. Sharon Reddy, who's one of the main plaintiffs against them and is still in the community, but that's being argued over later this year. She's got, I think it's 13 children.
Wow.
And 85 grandchildren.
85 grandchildren.
Every time she goes to court, we have to recalculate because there's a few more turned up. But that's the story of one woman in there, and there's lots like her. And she, if you meet her, would be the most clear, genuine Christian person you could ever want to meet. And she's come up through this evil, and she calls it evil. And she started leading the litigation because she knows the evil's got to be rooted out. And that's what the litigation with her is all about. And she is the lead plaintiff in most of the major cases. Amazing woman, amazing woman.
With multiple leaders being convicted, you'd think there'd be a case for Oranga Tamariki or the police or everybody else to move into that community and start like digging into it. But it seems they're leaving these people in place. I mean, you take the last shepherd, from what I read in the media, he fought tooth and nail in the court until the day he had to front up in court for his trial, and then he pled guilty.
Not quite. He let the trial run for 2 days and was trying to negotiate a deal each night.
Wow.
So finally he agreed, he accepted enough that the Crown said, fine, we've got what we want. He put those girls through evidence.
So just a little bit of extra torture.
Yep.
It's
But also,
kind of thick.
it's also to see if his power and control can stop the witnesses.
And when
Because
it
that's
was
what they've done in the past.
Right.
Now, you've got to realise there are about 14 or 15 guys, adult males, who have been through or are going through sexual predator type charges.
14 or 15.
Yeah. And a lot of those are convicted now serving jail sentences.
Well, we haven't heard anything about these people.
Well, there is some publicity around it, but they always have fights over suppression of names, suppression of Gloriavale, all these sort of things, and they just pull them on and drag them through the courts. But you got to pause and say, hang on, there's 600 people in the community, say, 400 are children under 15.
Wow.
How many adults have you got in that community as a ratio to those that have been convicted and jailed for sexual offending? It is horrifically high. And here you've got 2 overseeing shepherds, 2 right hands of God, 2 absolutely powerful men, both convicted of sexual offending against little girls.
Plus 14 or 15 others.
Plus others, yeah. You have got a massive cover-up sitting inside there by the other servants and shepherds because they know what's going on. If a girl complains, oh, it's your fault. You must have shown them some ankle because men can't control themselves. That's fine. Men are allowed not to control themselves, but you as a woman, you've provoked them. You showed them a bobby sock. Oh, yeah. That's what goes down there. And they get pulled into servants and shepherds meetings. The girl gets utterly berated as a tramp, a slut, everything else. And I'm talking real words used from conversations I've had with some of my female clients. They are absolutely trashed by the male leaders. These guys know.
It's sick, aren't they?
It's sick. And those that aren't sexual predators are covering up sexual predators, and to me that's worse.
They're enabling them.
They're enabling them. And they are absolutely hammering these girls. It's just sick, full stop. Where's the bloody government? Now, I had an interview with the media after Howard Temple, the current overseeing shepherd, pleaded guilty. And the question's simple. Prime Minister, what are you doing? Because he's the only one now with the power to lead his government to do something, and he's not. He gets interviewed at the National Party conference a couple of Saturdays ago, and he says, I'm concerned. Concerned?
He's concerned.
Excuse me?
Concerned that 2 overseeing shepherds and 14 or 15 others have got sexual offences against young people.
In a closed community with 400 little kids, most of whom are female, and are being abused today.
And it's not just sexual abuse either.
Yeah.
Because the boys are under abuse as well.
Yeah, it's boys and girls.
Brainwashing and...
Operation Minneapolis is 61 under 17 boys. 2017 was when the charge, 2018 where the charges were done. So you've got 61 boys who are under 17 because it was all youth court, convicted as perpetrators and victims. Now, there weren't many victims, but there were some that were just pure victims, and that was forced. These are now the new leaders coming into the community because it's now 2025, so they've got another 8, 9, 10 years on their age, so they're into their 20s. These are the new leaders coming through. Wow. Now look at what's going on inside this community. These guys have already got youth court convictions.
Again,
what are we doing?
Without knowing all the details, I'm sitting here thinking, well, there's clear safety issues here.
Absolutely.
You've got the education ministry funding a school which is filled with kids that are being preyed upon, but sometimes by the teachers of those schools.
Yeah, there's a couple of teachers being convicted. The headmaster of the school got stood down for knowingly employing a pedophile to teach in the school, so he got suspended from being the headmaster. The education people know all this, but when we start looking at the school, it keeps getting ERO reports saying it's okay. Now, at the moment, it's on the government plate because they've said the school's not up to scratch. So at the moment, the school's being shut down and they're doing homeschooling, whatever. But the reality is, when a baby's born, like every little kid, they cry and they've got free will that'll develop and all this thing. Now, free will is their word, not mine. They use the word free will. I've got a letter written by Hopeful Christian when he was in jail, exhorting how they had to drum out free will before they get to the ladies in the baby centre. That's at between 4 and 6 weeks old.
Wow.
They have to have free will drummed out by them. As I say, free will is their term. And you have to really follow and understand this.
So
I then go and
touch on that free will for a bit, because it's a key core belief of Christian belief, right? When God created the earth and Adam and Eve and etc., he gave Adam and Eve free will, and then he said, "You can do whatever you want here, but don't eat that." Right, but there was no fence around it, so free will was the core part of it. So they're drumming it out.
Here is the right hand of God drumming out free will. But you've got to understand what they do. I got this letter, and how the hell do you do that? And I asked a couple of friends who are medical, said, how do you drum free will out of a baby by the time they're 4 weeks old? And everybody looked at me dumb and said, what the f are you talking about? So I flew down to see some of the plaintiffs, and we get this discussion going. And then one of them says, oh, well, you hold their nose and cover their mouth until they relax. What do you mean?
So you suffocate them.
You suffocate them. And they have numerous cases where dad goes too long, too hard, and they have to revive babies. And I've got all this evidence. But it doesn't stop just at stopping them crying. It stops their free will, but it actually undermines their ability to challenge authority. It undermines their ability to build any sort of independent thought. So this suffocating technique is incredibly important to how they get control. These kids have memories of disobeying the shepherd, of being suffocated. That's psychologically
It's definitely core inside your amygdala. It becomes a response automatically.
Response. Yeah, and it's built into them. So this is why it's so hard for them to leave. And it's really hard for these people to leave.
That's quite disgusting. I'm shocked by it.
Okay. Well, as at today, the practice still continues. I can prove that in 2015, 2016, SIPs became aware of it and nothing happened.
So 10 years later, Child, Youth and Family, or whatever they're called now, are aware that suffocation is a child raising technique used in the community
to suppress and control their ability to think.
That's disgusting.
Now, right now, the police are aware of this, and apparently they've got policewomen going up there to get to know the mothers to teach them not to do this practice. The police are fucking fools, because this practice is not to stop them crying. This practice is to get mind control of a baby before they're 4 weeks old.
Then they stick them in a nursery where mind control continues.
Yeah, the leaders, the mothers running that, the mainly leaders' mothers, and I've got evidence of this, carry on doing that technique. Now, I've got a witness who puts her baby in the centre like they all have to do, and she goes off and works. Yeah, they work
at her appointed job.
And they've got a little radio on them, come down and breastfeed them, and then they go back again. They've got no rapport with their kids because they're in the centre. It's a factory. Anyway, she goes and picks a baby up one day, and baby's got a bruise. I won't even tell you the sex. Baby's got a bruise. So she goes back to say, what happened? Oh, your baby was very, very naughty. And she walks out because she can't contest any further. This is a senior woman telling that. Baby is 9 months old. 9 months old, was very naughty and is disciplined to the point the suffocation's done to the strength that they got bloody great bruises on them. God's sake. This is going on every day. This is known by SIPs. This is known by the government. It's known by the police. And they're still carrying on today. And the police think, oh, it's just to stop the kids crying. It's not. I've got the letter that says what it is. They've seen the letter that says what it is. They are absolutely unbelievably letting this practice continue, just a little bit of education. The Crimes Act says what suffocation is, and that's good jail time. Oh, but these are ignorant mothers. Fine. What about the parties too? Who's encouraging it?
But ignorance isn't an excuse of the law.
That's right. The thing is that it might be a religious practice. It's dangerous. It's got huge risk of creating brain damage. It's absolutely done to make them compliant. And the police are just saying, oh, don't do it, love. For God's sake, put some people in bloody jail. Get deterrent going. Take the community to bits, SIPs, for this practice. That practice alone should shut down Gloriavale totally. No. Where's SIPs?
So you're sitting on all of this information. That's just one aspect. What else is there that's happening that would shock people that you're allowed to talk about?
That's the worst I can talk about.
That's the worst.
But the thing is that the worst thing is nothing's been done about it. Nothing has been done about it. Oh, a police lady turning up saying, oh, you shouldn't do that, love, when she's suffocating a kid.
As soon as she leaves the community, in will come an elder or whatever they call them, who will sit there and say, just ignore everything the police said.
No, you've nicked my line. What happened when the SIPS thing went through in 2015, 2016? People were taken out and interviewed, and I've got a witness who sat in on the side of those interviews, and this particular witness knows what they were told, knows they had all the evidence of suffocation going on, knows that the reason for it being done was power and control. And then they hear nothing. And one day, hopeful Christian says, oh, well, it's all fine. Just don't do it in front of strangers again. So if you've got strangers around you, go off somewhere out where they won't see you and do it. See, the problem was a Canadian woman was brought in by one of the guys. She saw it. She rang up the SIPS hotline, and that's what brought them in.
But it's still going on 10 years later.
Yes, now 225, and the police are up to saying, oh, don't do that, love. Sorry, you're suffocating a kid. If you're being told to do it by someone and it's part of the ethos, take those people and put them in jail too.
You mentioned that mother was it 13 children?
Yep, sure.
Yeah, 85 grandchildren.
Yep.
You've got a closed community where there's really nobody extra coming in.
There's been no new people in there for about 10, 15 years, except for one pedophile who got in who thought this was utopia, and they actually did kick him out. But he was a pedophile.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's quite a few pedophiles in there.
Yeah, but they're living in it.
But you've got this closed community of 600 people where the leadership controls who's marrying who. This is a very small population here.
Controls the money, controls what they eat at night, controls who they marry, controls what work they do, works them long, huge hours. Control.
Yeah, there's a famous study, I think it was done in the 40s in a Waikato town called Wahara.
Yeah.
About inbreeding.
Mm.
It was a small community,
Mm.
and particularly in the Maori community in that area, there was significant inbreeding and significant genetic damage going on.
Yeah.
Surely this is an issue in this town as well, in this little community. How are they supposedly mitigating this?
I have heard they got what's called a breeding book.
Like a stud book?
Like a stud book. And I got that from a woman who was walking along Takapuna Beach and met a guy called Fervent, somebody or other, and got chatting about Christian values and things like that, and mentioned the community. And she asked that very question. And he said, oh no, we've got a breeding book. That was the words he used according to her. Now, they don't know I've got that witness, but that's me letting something out of the bag I've got coming for people. But the thing is that they have to, because the laws of consanguinity and affinity in marriages is huge, and they have a real problem of the gene pool being not so good.
It's rather shallow, isn't it?
Yeah, but then you've got the issue of, shall we say, sexual dalliances that may not be supposed to be happening, and then you've got the whole gene pool mucked up, because quite a bit of infidelity does go on inside the place from what I've seen.
Sounds like it's a cesspool, not a gene pool.
It's a cesspool. Good word for it. But this community, 50 years old, they convicted out the original letter. Bet Potter, they ripped it to bits. Didn't rip this one to bits. Why not? Okay, so what protects Gloriavale? What protects Gloriavale from the government agencies, and any decent thinking on the part of people in power and authority anywhere in this country? What protects them?
Who's protecting the children? Because it isn't the parents.
No.
It isn't the leadership of the community.
You've got to understand, all the parents are under power and control, and they do as they're told. So they will say, oh no, it's the parents' decision. No, the parents have to follow the shepherd. Unity, submission, They follow the shepherd. It is the shepherd who's in total power, absolute total power.
And the guy's a convicted pedophile.
Yep, 2 of them now. 1, 2. All the leaders, both gone.
What about the new shepherd?
Don't know. He was not born in the community, but came in as a very young boy. He has been brought up through the unworldly, snuffing, suffocating teachings, and he's now the boss.
So it will continue.
Oh yeah, he knows no different.
I'm just staggered by what you reveal.
But he is seen as a very strong religious, in their version of religion, guy. So he will be very firm into what we believe in all its teachings, and on it goes. I don't hold out a lot of hope for the future of the community becoming this lovely Christian Mary Poppins, Julie Andrews singing from the hills of The Sound of Music. Sure ain't that.
It's Pollyanna-ish, really. They've got this quaint view that they're a perfect utopia, and actually they're a fetid cesspool of evilness.
It is. It has an absolute evil underbelly, and nothing's been done about it.
What should be done about it, Brian? What do you want to see being done?
There's 2 simple ways. There's a thing called the Corporations Investigations Act, and a corporation under that act is anybody or whatever you have. We devised that in the 80s to deal with some of the great creations that we used to rip off everybody, including mum and dad, round the bloody countryside. It's got the power to move in, but the FMA has to trigger it. See, people won't understand that this is their superannuation scheme. This is their whole life savings. This is an investment scheme for those that are in it. They work hard. They give all their money to these guys. They manage it.
They get looked after.
Documents get looked after till death, blah, blah, blah. But in actual fact, they kick them out if they so much as disagree. John Reddy's classic example, he just looked at other Christian scriptures, so they kicked him out. They have to follow their absolute beliefs on stuff. It is a superannuation scheme. It is a financial scheme. And their money is at risk because they can be pushed around, shoved around. If they put out a prospectus saying, hey, you can come and join us and these are the rules, the FMA would have an absolute fit. But the FMA, from what I'm told, won't look at it. It's religious community, not ours. It is an investment scheme. It is an investment scam. It is a fraud on those people inside it, but nobody's looking at that. Now, I've had talks with a lot of people in government about using that act, and I get nowhere. The other thing they can do, and it's exactly what they did with Lake Alice, they go in and they make a plan for each family, and they take each family out one at a time, and they rehabilitate them back into the community somewhere. That's what needs to be done. But nobody is prepared to make the political call. And I just don't understand the ministers of social welfare at
Education?
all. Education, I'm not going to criticize at the moment because under Erica, she is using the system to cramp them down, and she's only been there 18 months, 2 years, and she's very close to deregistering them, but she has to follow the proper process. This requires social welfare to step in and shut it down under their very strong powers to protect children. They have got absolute powers to protect vulnerable children. There's a Vulnerable Children's Act they can use, and they can put a plan in place to protect vulnerable children. Education's problem is that various groups have gone in there and they've just not understood what they're seeing. They get snow-jobbed. You turn up and the shepherds have this wonderful...
So they're running a Pimpkin village when anybody turns up.
Yeah. Oh, you can't sneak into Gloriavale. It's too isolated. They see you coming from 100 miles away. We've got evidence of, particularly the boys, saying, such and such coming today, so you've got to go up and sit up in the hills and not work. Others talk about being told to sit in sheds with the doors locked from the inside and sit quietly until they're told they can come out because they didn't want them seeing the child labour. This is what goes on in the place. The leaders know what they're doing is wrong, and they're covering it up.
I'm just gobsmacked. We don't see any of this in court reporting. We don't see any of this in. Where's the journalists that are doing an in-depth investigation into Gloriavale? Well, where is the inquisitiveness?
Suppression orders.
There's another reason why suppression orders.
How many suppression orders over all this stuff?
But they all get found guilty. So why have they got suppression orders?
Victims.
But it's a closed community.
I know, but the victims are usually someone very close to the perpetrator, so it's pretty hard to sometimes publish the name of the perpetrators.
So part of the solution for Gloriavale and also the wider community is a serious look at suppression orders.
That's got to be looked at, but what's got to be looked at in this instance is a whole wider way that suppression's used to try and shut out and shut down the public really understanding what's going on.
How do you cope with all this information that you're finding, Brian? I mean, it must be harrowing.
Well, it gets hard. It gets frustrating, particularly when you're trying to teach and reteach judges what's going on because people don't believe you. It's so bad. You get a judge and they both, this can't be right.
Is it like it's too awful to contemplate, so we'll just go la, 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 la and ignore it?
That's right. And we've only been able to get 2 cases to proper trial, which was the boys' employment case and the girls' employment case. And all the sexual stuff was removed by another judge in the employment court because they wanted it all taken out. So the chief didn't sit on that, so went to another judge and he chopped a whole lot of it out. We got a bit of it in, but there was an enormous amount of stuff that was ruled irrelevant to employment of sexual abuse. And strictly speaking, it probably was, but we tried to put it in just to get it into the public arena. But the thing is, we have yet to get a trial where we can have full raw on the sexual abuse in the community. It's coming, but it's not there yet.
Well, I hope you do get there because I'm just appalled by what I've
Well, we've got about 4 of the cases coming. We'll get one of them there. And the big one, though, will be the slavery case, which also includes government departments and civil servants personally. And that's going to take a while to get through the various stages of everybody trying to duck and dodge and get away from what we're doing. And it'll get there. It's going to take time.
It seems to me that the best solution would be to be old school, surround the place, take everyone away in family lots, and then light a match and burn it to the ground.
Well, that's what they did to Bert Potter, and that's what they did to Hopeful Christian. If you look at the films of the raid on him, they surrounded the district, and they grabbed them all, and he ended up being charged. It's quite funny because one of our lead witnesses, she was an 8-year-old girl at the time of that raid, and she says she can remember the word up, the cops are coming, and they all ran away, and she got tackled by a policeman, I think it was. And she says, I turned around and said to him, I don't need to talk to you, copper. You can't interview. You can't do this. You can't do it. And she says, that's what she'd been taught. 8 years old, right back in the 1990s. She was taught the police are the enemy and you don't have to talk and don't have to do that. I've got evidence of Gloriavale bringing in a lawyer to give them advice of what to do if interviewed by the police. Only problem is, these are victims. These are victims, not perpetrators are talking about. These are victims. And it absolutely frustrates me that this sort of stuff they've got the money, it's going on. But I've actually got the documents. I've actually got the advice he gave in writing. It's unreal.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It sickens me.
It is sick, full stop. But this is why I say, Prime Minister, what are you going to do about it?
Well, he'll probably put his hands in his pockets.
Well, the thing is, he needs to sit down, not with his officials, because they have no clue what's going on. He needs to sit down with us and actually, with the victims, get told to his face what's going on, so he hears it firsthand and he can get the message just how serious.
I mean, he bangs on about the children of Gaza, and he's got children in New Zealand that are being brainwashed, suffocated, sexually abused, treated as slaves,
Yeah.
and he's sitting on his hands.
Yeah.
Oh,
But he can't do anything about Gaza. He can do something about this. See, at the end of the day, international politics, we know it's all about people being heard, seen, and da-da-dum.
well,
It's just not about words.
it's
It's what
just
you do.
virtue signaling.
Yeah, it's what you do. He can do something here for these kids, and he's doing nothing. But it's now to the point where unless a Prime Minister steps up and drives these departments and drives the ministers and says, I want this coordinated approach back, done, going, the way it goes. You talk about things that are funny that come out. They set up this all-of-government response in 2015. They canned it in 2017. We run the boys' case, and I've got a document in the government. Oh, we've got all this new evidence. We need to reopen this committee. What's the new evidence? The evidence from 3 of my plaintiffs. If they go back to the original broadcasts that led to setting up this committee in 2015, it's all there. No different, just different people saying it. My plaintiffs are, at that stage, 12-year-olds, something like that. They could have been saved from an awful lot of pain. No, nothing done. And you just wonder, where do ministers of social welfare sit on Gloriavale? Do they ask questions? What's happening in Gloriavale? It's the biggest issue in their portfolio, but they probably don't even get told about it by the officials. I don't know what they're told. I know if I was a minister and I got told about Gloriavale, all hell would fly until we solved it. And it wouldn't be left to civil servants. I, as minister, would go down and boot bums until it was done, because that's their job. Wasn't it Norm Kirk said? There's a fabulous saying that Winston has. Norm Kirk, when he swore in his first cabinet, said to them, your job as ministers is to protect the public from the civil service. And Norm's right. So please, Prime Minister, protect these little members of the public.
Well, I hope he listens to it. Now, there's another aspect to Brian Henry that's not Brian Henry the barrister, Brian Henry the crusader. You run a KiwiSaver account.
Yep, I do.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well,
it's coming back to this injustice thing, isn't it, though, why you set that KiwiSaver up?
yeah, I got approached because there wasn't a KiwiSaver that had the ethical values that people like the Muslims and other religions could invest into. And the problem was interest. People don't understand the issue behind it. The issue is that you must make or do something to earn your money, not just sit back and I've got a lot of money, so you pay me for the use of my money. You rent your money out. And that's regarded by Christians, Muslims, Jewish, as wrong. So our fund does not have any interest income. If we get any interest, it's what's called purified, and we pay it to charity. We pay quite a bit of money to charity every year through our system. But the biggest thing is all our investments are making or doing something for the good of humankind. And that's our base. It's called Always Ethical, and that's what it is. It's what it stands for. It's the first ethical offering. And we don't pay lip service to the rules. We monitor it every day. We watch what they're all doing. And if they breach the rules, we sell them straight away. And we've got a good investment model that works with it. And we were one of the leading KiwiSavers up until early this year when Donald Trump upset the market really badly for us and everybody else. We've pretty much made that money back up again in the past few months. We've been sort of working hard with the investments and what we can do. It is a very, I believe, good for the world KiwiSaver. And I can proudly say its ethics are impeccable. We don't do gambling. Well, that doesn't mean no casinos. That means no financial products that are actually a gamble. The derivatives, for example, they're all gamble. Most people's KiwiSavers have got elements of gambling in there.
Yeah.
But they all say, oh, no gambling. Well, that means no casino. We don't do anything that's a gamble. You've got to work for it. And that's our philosophy.
So you invest in companies that make things.
Make or do things.
Yeah, make or do things.
But that's my pescatarian heritage.
But not weapons, not alcohol, not cigarettes, no vices.
No vices, no. So
Yeah.
we're not having a vice fund. But no, see, I actually started a fund called US50, and it was based on my upbringing. And when we looked at doing this ethical fund, all we did was take out a couple of banks, and we met the ethics, because I've always believed you invest in companies making or doing something that people want. And for the good of humankind, it's not very hard a filter to put on top of it. So that's what we do.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at utility companies, power companies, generators, forests.
Yeah. Companies like Apple, Microsoft, they all comply. They're all hardworking companies. So there's a lot of really good, solid manufacturing business companies that we invest in. And it's I believe, a very good, solid base to invest money.
I've seen some of your returns, and they're kind of up there with people that people consider to be the better.
We've run in the top 5 since inception.
And we don't hear about you. Why is that?
Well,
is this a
we've had a few problems with competitors and advisory groups because they don't like the fact it's got a religious ethos behind it. They don't like no interest because they think that's crazy stuff. And it's very hard to explain to people who are living in an interest-based society, who are banks and all that, and they're totally built on derivatives, things like that what they're doing is gambling. And the biggest problem is to get people to understand that if you're going to be a solid investor, you invest in someone making something or doing something that the world wants.
And doing it well.
They don't see that. They want to get into the speculation. They want to get into all sorts of sexy products where the investment community makes a lot of money. You make a lot of money running a derivative fund compared to what I do.
But you've got a fair bit of money under management.
Oh yeah, we're doing well. We're doing all right. We'll get noisier and noisier as we grow, but we have grown literally subsidized by me and a few other people to the point where we're at critical mass, and we're paying our way, we're paying our bills. We're not paying people like me and a few others in the company well, but we'll get better salaries, but we are way below the salary base of our competitors. But that's how you make it work. And it's, again, it's partly one of my pet hobby horses. Costs me money, makes money, it's still all right. But it's fun.
That bitter old bag at the Herald, Mary Holmes, she doesn't like you very much, does she?
I wouldn't call her a bitter old bag, but yes, she's had a few goes at us. She doesn't like the pure equity nature of what we're doing, but we're shifting into real estate very shortly. We're busy getting all the documentation put in place for that, and we will start also holding buildings as part of what we do. So, it's get yourself big enough, then you can afford to do these things.
So you're not empire building. You're what you're doing is building the fund for the benefit of the members.
Yeah. There's no empire being built. It's all for the members. Yeah.
But that's Brian Henry, isn't it? Always for you, working for your client.
Yeah. I could have made a fortune in other things, but I'd much rather do what I'm doing. I sleep at night, and I haven't had a job since 1986 when I went to the bar. I've just lived life and had a load of fun. And
Politics, finance,
law, patents, copyright, did a lot of that sort of work. And touch wood, sufficiently successful to keep people coming back. So I've had quite a good range of successes. And I've enjoyed and still do enjoy life and what I'm doing and the people around me. It's good.
50 years you've been doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You've got a fair few years left in you, haven't you?
Well, I'm 75 in a few days. I intend to live to 104. I've got to beat my uncle. So that's my target.
It's going to be a grand old party then.
Going to be a grand old party then. Yep. There'll be a brilliant party at 105.
Yeah. Well, Brian, as usual, it's a pleasure to listen to you, to talk to you. You're a bloody good mate.
Yeah.
And I hope people can listen to what drives you and find out that Brian Henry's not this dark prince of politics that's lurking in the background, even though you are. You're just having a grand old time.
Grand old time. But to the people that I'm acting against, they think I'm an arsehole. That's fine.
I don't mind you that other people think you're an arsehole when you write letters to them for me.
That's right. But it's a case of you do your job for your client and you drive it and you don't let go.
I harken back to that one mistake that you caught Colin Craig on in court under cross-examination. I still remember Too Good peering across his glasses at Colin Craig when you caught him perjuring himself. And I'm staggered nothing ever happened of that.
Well, you should come and see what's said in some of the Gloriavale cases.
Yeah, the eye-opening. Brian Henry, thank you so much for coming on the Good Oil podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Before we finish up, I want to have a word to you about sponsorship. Your brand needs to be on this podcast. Contact Cam at goodoil.news. Thanks for listening.
Hey, now welcome to the show, where the wind's blowing strong and the truth can flow. This is the Good Oil. Catch a vibe today with Cam Slater leading us all the way.